Hello, this is Dave from the Wizard's Keep in Muncie, Indiana. And October is upon us, so I thought I would do my top 10 list of my favorite Halloween-themed or horror-themed games, at least the games I like to play around Halloween time. To start off, at number 10 is a game called Last Friday. Now, Last Friday is a one versus all type of game. And what that means is one player is going to play like the slashers. Think of like Michael Myers or a Jason from Friday the 13th. And then the other player is going to play your camp counselors. And the goal, there's different scenarios, so there's different goals that either the camp counselors may have during each game. But primarily it's going to be try to survive the night. One player that's playing the slasher, half the time they don't have a piece on the board. They have to use a hidden movement, moving around the board or moving around the camp. Whereas the other camp counselors kind of either trying to move around, try to either accomplish their goal, or at least stay away from the slasher. Then every so many turns, the slasher is going to randomly show up and have to reveal their location, much like you would imagine like in a slasher film where the slasher makes an appearance to chase down the counselor. And so I think this game really captures that theme and that mood very well and is a great game to play around Halloween time. My number 9th game is a game called Zombieicide. Now there's tons and tons of zombie-themed board games and tons of Cthulhu-themed board games. And spoilers, we're going to see a few of these on this list. But Zombieicide is kind of one of the quintessential ones. It's a cooperative game where everybody's going to be working together versus the zombies. So you're playing different heroes, trying to achieve different objectives based on the scenario. But primarily, you're trying to kill as many zombies as possible. And this game's made by Simon or Cool Mini or not. So they're going to have really, really amazing looking figures for their zombie figures. The figures come unpainted in the box, but I've seen many people who have painted these up to the same quality as somebody who might paint like Warhammer figurines or something. And that is Zombicide. My number 8th favorite game to play around Halloween time is a game called Touch of Evil. Just a touch, though. And in Touch of Evil, this game can be played cooperatively or it can be played competitively. But what you're doing is it takes place in kind of a colonial period, sort of like a Salem witch trials time of period, where depending on the game, you're going to randomly draw a different overlord, some sort of main villain. It could be like a werewolf lord or a vampire lord, or I believe they even have like an animated scarecrow. And depending on which of those you draw, it's going to have special minions that are kind of tied to that theme. So like the werewolves kind of like different wolves. The vampire lord has bats and things that can kind of fly around town. The scarecrow has different flocks of crows that your characters may have to deal with. What you're going to do is you're going to go around town and do investigating to try to dig up clues and investigation tokens. You can spend those investigation tokens like currency to either buy new items to equip your character to kind of upgrade them, or you can use them to find the lair of this secret overlord. You also can use those investigation tokens to find out about the town elders, because when you go to eventually fight the overlord in the end, you bring your choice of several town elders to kind of join you in that fight. Well, those town elders have secrets, and one of those secrets might be that they're secretly working for the overlord. And if they are, in that case, they will join the overlord, and now you got to fight the town elder and the overlord. But they may be working with you or working with your cause, and so therefore, if you've learned their secrets, they can join you and fight the overlord to help you win. And that is A Touch of Evil. Another game, or at least my number 7th favorite game to play around Halloween time, it's kind of a stretch to call it a game. It's more like an activity or an exercise, but it's still a lot of fun, and that is a game called Dark Stories. Now, Dark Stories, what you do is one player is going to draw a card, and I kind of pull an example here. This one says, New Shoes. And I don't know if you can read it or not, but it says, Marie went to the store and bought a new pair of shoes. Later that evening, she died because of that purchase. Now, so on the back of the card, there's going to be kind of an explanation of what happened. And so one person's kind of like the judge or the narrator, and then everybody else is going to ask questions that have to be yes or no, answered with a yes or no. They try to find out how Marie's purchase of her new shoes ultimately led to her death. So like I said, it's just kind of a nice activity, but it's a good brain teaser. It's a game that I've taken to like the restaurant or sitting around a campfire, because you don't really need a table or anything, and so one person can just read it and everybody else is kind of sitting around asking the questions. And it's kind of a nice little puzzle, and that's Dark Stories. My number 6 favorite game is a game called Elder Sign, and this is the first one on the list that has the Cthulhu or the Lovecraftian theme. This one is a cooperative game, a dice-based cooperative game. So the theme is that each player is a secret or is a employee of a museum, and maybe you're like the night watchman to a museum or something. But there's different artifacts of Lovecraftian horror in this museum, and so different cultists are kind of breaking in, or different maybe Lovecraftian monsters are being summoned or spawned in the museum. So you're gonna have like these different fires that you basically have to put out, and how you do that is by rolling different dice, getting different symbols to fulfill the obligations of that challenge. And different characters are going to have different special. Every character has a character, and that each character has a special ability. So certain characters are going to be better suited to put out certain, or to kind of accomplish certain goals versus others. So you have to decide as a group who's best to go do what challenge. And each time, some challenges, when you defeat them, you get some. Every challenge you defeat, you get a reward. Some of them just give you minor rewards of extra equipment, but ultimately, some of the more difficult ones will give you rewards of elder signs. And depending on the scenario and the elder god that's the ultimate boss of the game, you have to acquire so many elder signs before a timer or time limit runs out and the elder god is summoned to Earth, and then at that point you're done for. But if you acquire enough elder signs before that happens, then you'll win the game, and that is Elder Sign. My number 5 or 5th favorite horror-themed or Halloween-themed game is a game called Mysterion. Now this is another cooperative game, but it's done a little differently. The concept of this is one player is a ghost, and the ghost can't speak, and all the other players are psychic investigators. And the ghost, ultimately you're trying to find out who murdered the ghost or how the ghost died. And you're trying to find, kind of like Clue, you're trying to find the same things. You're trying to find out the murderer, the room that the ghost was killed in, and also the weapon that the ghost was killed with. But like I said, the ghost they can't speak. It can only give out clues. And how it gives out clues are it hands out to the psychic investigators these textless art cards. And here's a couple examples. They have these kind of wonderfully illustrated art cards here. And a ghost might hand out one of these cards to a player to kind of signify how the ghost was murdered. Like maybe in this one, maybe it was killed in the study. So the clue is you got this feather and this pen, so it's maybe something you might see on the desk in the study. And there's just different ultimately these cards are pretty abstract. So it's going to be up to the psychic investigators to try to interpret the clues of these pictures and maybe what they mean to determine who the murderer and what room and what weapon is used. So it's a great deduction game, kind of follows in that kind of horror theme with kind of murder and psychic powers and like. My 4th favorite Halloween or horror themed game is Fury of Dracula. Now this one's kind of similar to the last Friday in the sense that this is a one versus everybody else. One player plays Dracula, and the other players are playing the other heroes from the novels, like Jonathan Harker, Dr. Seward, Mina Harker. And so the other players, their goal is it's kind of like the end of the book or the end of some movies where Dracula has been discovered in England and he's trying to flee back across Europe to get back to his castle in Transylvania. Like in Last Friday, Dracula doesn't have a piece on the board. He has a hidden movement or is secretly moving across the board. And the other heroes have to kind of determine via deduction and clues to figure out what route Dracula is taking to get back to his castle. And then ultimately when you find him, you have to fight and defeat him. But you want to try to do that before he gets back to his castle, because once he's back to his castle, he's much more difficult to beat. And that creates a lot of suspense as the player playing Dracula has to keep a poker face as if they're getting closer or further away, and then the other players have to kind of try to deduce based on clues of where maybe places of Dracula has been to try to figure out his route and how he's crossing Europe. And that is Fury of Dracula. My 3rd favorite Halloween themed game or horror-themed game is Mansions of Madness. Now, this is another Lovecraftian game, and my highest ranked Lovecraftian game on this list. And Mansions of Madness is also another cooperative game that uses an app. It's almost like an RPG, where the app acts as almost like a game master, and the players are going to go through different scenarios of Lovecraftian horror. Many of them are mansion, as you imagine by the title, a mansion or haunted house theme, but not all of them are. One of my favorite scenarios in this game was based off of the story Shadows over Innsmouth, where, if you're not familiar with the story, you randomly arrive in this town via shipwreck, and everybody in the town is kind of like fish people, and so you're trying to maneuver around the town. You're trying to find different items to be able to eventually signal somebody into a boat that's out to sea to come in and rescue you before the mobs of fish people track you down. And that is just one of the many great scenarios in Mansions of Madness, and that's why I like it so much. My second favorite Halloween-themed game, or favorite game to play around Halloween time, is Last Night on Earth. Now, Last Night on Earth is another zombie-themed game, and the highest zombie-themed game on my list. This one, you've got either one or two players play the zombies, and then the other players will play different heroes. And all the heroes are different archetypes that you see in your typical zombie shows or zombie movies. You got like the gruff sheriff, the prom queen, the jock, the kind of wily vagabond, vagrant that wanders into the town. And based on that character, they're going to have different special abilities or maybe different equipment that they come with. The game also runs through different scenarios. A lot of these scenarios are things you will see in classic zombie movies or zombie shows. You've either got one where everybody's holed up in the old farmhouse, sort of like a Night of the Living Dead, and the goal is the heroes are just trying to survive the night. Another one is also kind of borrowed from Night of the Living Dead, is there's a truck in the middle of town, and the heroes are trying to find the keys to the truck and find the gasoline for the truck to fuel the truck up so they can drive out of town before the zombies overrun them. So it just does a really good job of just kind of capturing some, the campiness of the different zombie shows, and it's a lot of fun, especially to play around Halloween time. And then to my favorite. My number one favorite game to play around Halloween time. Now, this list of games, these are kind of like, how I kind of rank them, is based on how I feel they kind of capture the mood and the theme of horror and Halloween, and the games I really want to play around this time of year. I didn't really rank them as my favorite games, or my games even by favorite mechanics, or what I think is the best game, but just the ones that are best for this time. So my favorite one to play at this time is Betrayal: A House on the Hill. And Betrayal: House on the Hill, everybody's plays different characters. You can be like a priest or a high school jock, sort of like a little bit like Last Night on Earth, and with these different kind of archetype characters. And you've wandered into this haunted mansion, and you build the mansion as you go. As you go enter into a room, you lay out a tile, and when you do so, it tells you there's a symbol on the tile, and it tells you either an event happens in the room, or you may have found an item in the room, or you may have discovered an omen. And if you've discovered an omen, in addition of getting that card, which is almost like a super item that helps your character out, you also make a die roll. If you roll less than the number of omen cards drawn by all the other players, then at that point you trigger the haunt. And what that means is one of the players is going to become a traitor. And also it tells you, based on which omen card you drew and which room you drew the omen card in, what scenario you're playing. And that's one thing that's great about this game, is because it has 50 different scenarios in the game. So every time you play it, it's like a different game. One, because a different person is going to be a traitor each time, and you're likely to be playing a totally different scenario than the time before. But when you do, you see what scenario you're playing. At that point, you kind of take a pause in the game. Usually the traitor goes into the other room. They take the traitor book, and they're going to read a section that tells them what it is they're trying to do to win the game, and some clues what the heroes are trying to do. And then vice versa, the heroes are going to be in another room reading the hero book, and it's going to give them some clues what the traitor might be trying to do to win the game, and what the heroes need to do to win the game. It might be that this mansion here was the last resting place of a vampire lord, and that the traitor was secretly a thrall to this vampire lord and has lured the rest of you into the mansion in order to sacrifice you to revive his master. So the heroes might be trying to find the last remains or the hidden remains of where the vampire lord is like staked or where his coffin is. And your goal is to find the vampire lord, find the means to defeat the vampire lord or vanquish him for all. Or the traitor might be trying to just kill all the players or do something, a scenario they're trying, what they need to do to revive the vampire lord so he can kill all the players and win for them. And so that's the great thing about Betrayal House on the Hill. And like all these games, does an amazing job of kind of fulfilling or capturing that horror Halloween time experience. Well, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed hearing about these games. And as always, if you have any questions, feel free to stop into the Wizard's Keep or comment here on YouTube or on Facebook or whatever, and I'll be glad to answer those questions the best I can. Until then, thank you for watching.